Hemp could replace actually graphene, which is a super capacitor in batteries, in dry batteries. So that's quite a promising area of research. And also an interesting feature, as long as the use of inputs to grow it remains reasonable, it is a carbon negative plant. It has sequestration properties which are actually higher than most of the forests that we have on Earth.
Hello, this is the Weekly Tradecast, a podcast brought to you by UNCTAD and Development. I'm Sarah Toms. We're exploring how major events are shaping trade and development and how that affects billions of people around the world. This week, we're looking at hemp and how developing countries can benefit from growing this versatile plant. Cultivated for many thousands of years, hemp can be used in food, textiles, biofuels, building materials, car parts, and even brewing more sustainable beer. Hardy and at home in many climates, it's friendly for the environment by soaking up carbon dioxide and using far less water than cotton. Hemp fibre is also an excellent and biodegradable replacement for plastic. But this wonder plant has not reached its full potential, partly because it belongs to the cannabis family. While industrial hemp is not an intoxicating plant, perceptions that hemp is a drug have kept it controversial in many countries. UNCTAD and Development says the global market could hit $18.6 billion by 2027, almost 4 times the amount in 2020. So how can we unlock the huge potential of hemp to benefit developing economies and support sustainability? Well, joining me now to explain all of this is economist Marco Fugazza from the Division on International Trade and Commodities. Great to have you here today. Tell me, the uses of hemp, how have they evolved over the years and how have attitudes about it changed?
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. Good morning. So hemp, as you mentioned in your introduction, has been used for various centuries, and it goes back to 8,000. The first traces that we have in archaeological research is about 8,000 BCs in China. Wow. Historically, it has always been used for textiles, but during the great exploration time, so the 15th to 17th centuries, it was used for making ropes and sails. In Great Britain, there was a law passed in the 16th century that imposed the cultivation of hemp on some part of the harvested areas. And if the farmers were not following this law, they could be fined. So that's just to show the importance that hemp also had in the great exploration time, and this may have contributed to the expansion of Great Britain during these centuries. Hemp has also been used for medical purposes, again back to ancient China period. At the moment of the Industrial Revolution, there has been the possibility to scale up a bit the production and introduce also some industrial processes. But it was also, at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, is also the discovery of the man-made fiber, which may have caused a change in the perception of hemp, because, as you mentioned, it belongs to the same species that its cousin cannabis with psychotropic properties. The association with this type of uses, contributed to actually the ban also of industrial hemp, together perhaps with some lobbying from these nascent man-made fiber industries, which led to the adoption of laws against the use of any type of cannabis plants, including hemp, by the mid-30s. There's been a resurgence during the Second World War of the use of hemp for the conception and the production of military furnitures and textiles, but also, again, ropes and sails. That was really the end of the area where hemp was intensively used for this type of production. And we had to wait until the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st of this century, to see increasing interest again in all the possible uses that can be made of the plant. Hemp could replace actually graphene, which is a super capacitor in batteries, in dry batteries. So that's quite a promising area of research. And also an interesting feature, as long as the use of inputs to grow it remains reasonable, it is a carbon negative plant. It has sequestration properties which are actually higher than most of the forests that we have on Earth, making it really a good candidate also for this type of processes. And there are other agricultural properties that could make hemp also useful in the regeneration, decontamination of soils. And hemp has been planted near the Fukushima nuclear plant after the disaster, we know, to regenerate and actually remove all the intoxicating components in the soil. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it had such a fascinating history. So what would you say are some of the more unusual or unexpected ways that hemp's being used, and what new applications might there be in the future?
Well, perhaps the most promising sector would be the construction one, because hemp has really extraordinary properties. It can be used to actually produce some concrete called hempcrete. So it's just a mix of the inner parts of the plant and lime. So you can even find some tutorials on YouTube to explain you how to construct your own bricks made of hemp and limes. And the properties of these materials are extremely interesting, especially for countries where we may want to have more sustainable habitats and urbanistic development plans. The highest building made almost exclusively of hemp was constructed in South Africa a couple of years ago. So we do believe that these are good signals in terms of future potential developments. On top of that, this type of materials could remain relatively cheap. And also fibers could be used for insulation. This is something we believe will have a very bright future, assuming that the use of hemp will not be actually hampered by perhaps regulations which are too restrictive in that respect still nowadays in most countries.
How can developing countries then, in particular, benefit from growing hemp? Where can they add value to how the plant is processed and used?
Hemp can be grown in almost all parts of the world. The traces of the first species were found in Central Asia, but we do have cultivation of hemp in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance in Malawi, in South America, Asia, obviously. I mean, it's a plant that can be grown relatively easily, as long as we don't want to move into some high industrial processes and respect also the botanical properties of the plants, which are low need of in fertilizers and water, as you mentioned before. That makes the plant actually accessible to most farmers in most parts of the world. What happens is that the expansion is clearly limited by the regulatory framework prevailing still in most countries. And also the fact that, this regulatory approach limits the uses of perhaps more indigenous varieties of the plant. So for the time being, there's a lot of farmers using seeds from Europe to grow hemp in regions that may not be the best adapted to this type of varieties. But hopefully countries will realize that also the promotion of indigenous species is necessary to actually see the full potential of the hemp sectors realized in the near future.
So still some way to go yet, and despite its many virtues, will hemp ever overcome the stigma?
So once again, hemp belongs to the same species than the psychotropic varieties of cannabis. The existing regulations, including the international conventions about drugs, do not necessarily provide specific definitions of hemp, but with a very low content of the THC, which is the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is psychotropic compound of the plant. So hemp has very low concentration in that compound, But this does not appear in any proper definition, at least a definition that would be recognized at the international level. On top of that, the UN conventions actually use the word cannabis to define only the flowering tops of the plant. That creates almost automatic associations with the rest of the plant, which is where most of the virtues of the plant belongs to. So as long as we don't have a proper definition recognized by most countries, the regulations may not follow, and governments in countries will still have the tendency to associate hemp with a plant with the potential of having strong psychotropic properties. So UN Trade and Development is working for that in collaboration with the World Customs Organization. So we are trying to get to a proper definition of hemp, and actually we would call it industrial hemp, just to make a clear, even clearer distinction. And that could actually hopefully help regulations in countries to also develop towards full legalization and recognition of the properties of the plants, which are not psychotropic and narcotic ones.
Thank you to UN Trade and Development's Marco Fugazza for being this week's guest. Tune into the weekly Tradecast next week and every week for more insights on the most pressing issues around the world of trade and development. There's even more on our website, UNCTAD.org. I'm Sarah Toms in Geneva. Goodbye for now.